Okay, so let's go over the basic data types in Python. So we have a few. The first one is integers. Okay, so in integers, these are just our whole numbers. So, oops, they're whole numbers. So examples are -5, 100, 5,000, sorry, 500, and then you can go over to 1,000, 10,000. So next, how about fractions and decimal numbers? So we call those in Python as floating point. So these are the decimal numbers. And examples would be pi, which is 3.14, 2.72, 1.5, and so on. So next, how about strings? So we've seen strings earlier when we printed hello world. So strings are ordered sequence of characters. So examples are the one earlier, so hello world. And then we can have this year is 2021. Or we can have dog. Okay, so as you can notice that there's a pattern here. So we have the double quotes and then the single quotes. So strings in general should be enclosed in single or double quotation marks. So regarding the ordered sequence of characters, so what does ordered sequence mean? So if we look at this example here, we see a bunch of letters, right? So those letters are characters, and even the space, right? There's a space in the middle. So sorry, let me make this bigger. So if we see the space here, okay, and that is also considered a character. So characters can be letters, symbols, numbers, basically what we see in our keyboard, but not everything, right? So of course the arrow keys are not included. So we can add, let's say I can add the symbol here, which is the percent symbol, for example, or maybe the let's say the colon. So those kinds of symbols. Okay, so next data type are lists. Okay, so what are lists? So lists are ordered sequence of objects. So the difference with strings, right? Strings are ordered sequence of characters. This time it's objects. So what are objects? So objects are what we've been talking about right now. So the data types. So an example would be 100. So the hello world. Oops. And then 200.3. So as you can see, what I've included is an integer, and then there's a string, and then there's a floating point, all enclosed in brackets. So lists look something like this. So okay, so different types of objects that are separated by commas and then enclosed by brackets. Okay, so let's go over a bit on lists. So I'll add another block here. So there are different lists methods. Methods. Okay, so let's try and create a list here. Apples, and then grapes, and then mangoes. Okay, so this is a type of list, right? It's fruits. So I can assign this fruits or this list to a variable. So fruits. So equals to, so fruits and then equals to the list that we just created. So what is fruit? So it's a variable. So all I did is assign the list to the word fruits or to the variable fruits. Okay, and what does this equal sign mean? So the equal sign is different from math. So it doesn't mean it is equal to this list is equal to this fruit. So the equal sign here is an assignment operator. So I'll create a comment here. Equal is an assignment operator. So what it does is what happens here is we are assigning the list to the word fruits. Okay, so if I want to add if I want to add a fruit in this list, so all I have to do is fruits.append. So and I can add oranges. So if I print this, so similar to what we did in the first example or the first part, which is print hello world, we can also print the list. Okay, so if I print fruits here and then click play, as you can see, this is our original list, and then this is our new list after appending oranges. So if we check this out, where did the oranges go? So it went to the last part. It was added at the end of the list. So apples, grapes, mangoes, and then oranges. So that's what happens when we use the append method for lists. Okay, let's do another example. So I'll take this list again, and then I'll use a different list method. So fruits dot insert, and then to lychee. So give me a second. So let's first play this, and then I'll explain later what this means. Oh, sorry, I forgot to print the to display the list. Okay, so this one is, again, this is our original list, right? And then this is our new list, the one printed here. So what this does is insert is we inserted lychee, right? So as you can see, there's lychee here. But why is it here instead of at the end, similar to what happened in the append method? That's because we are using index. So what is index? It's similar to just counting from 1, 2, 3. So right, 1, 2, 3, 4. So there are 4 fruits in our list. So in Python, we don't count from 1. We count beginning from 0. So we count from 0, 1, 2, 3. So right, apples is 0, and then grapes is 1, and then lychee is 2, right? So that's why I wrote 2 here, and then mangoes is 3. So if I place whatever number that I place here, means that is the index to which I will be inserting lychee. So that's why the index of lychee is 2, right? Again, 0, 1, 2, and then 3. Okay, so let's have another list method. So this time, sorry, I'll copy this and then just change this one to pop. Okay, so pop and then 2. So what happens if I do this? What is pop? So what happened? So pop just removed it removed an item inside the list. So it removed mangoes. Why? Because the number again is similar to the insert. It is the index. So 0, apple is 0, grapes is 1, mangoes is 2. So if I replace this with 1, it should remove grapes. There we go. So what happens if I just leave it blank? What will it remove? It will remove the very last item or object in our list. So in this case, it removed mangoes. Okay, let's move on. So on to our last method. So we can put here remove. Oops, remove. So I want to add another fruit here. So which is just a repeat fruit. So I repeated grapes, right? So let's see what happens. Oh, oops. Sorry, I forgot something. Okay. I forgot. So sorry about that. I forgot to put the whatever that the object that I want to remove. So that's what so having an error is okay. So it's part of programming, and in this case it was just a common mistake. So I forgot to put the object I want to remove. So as you can see, I removed grapes. But what happened? So remove is it removes the first item with a specified value. Okay, so what happened here is that I removed grapes, but it removed the very first appearance of grapes, which is this one, the one before mangoes. So it didn't remove the grapes after the object mangoes. So that is what the removed list method does do. So there are a lot more list methods, but some of them are more advanced than this one, and you can check them out after you've learned the basics. So let's continue more with our data types. So after list, let's discuss about dictionaries. Okay, so dictionaries are unordered key value pairs. Okay, so example. So I have here first name, and then one, and then last name, therapist. Okay, so let's take a look at this example. So what we have here is a dictionary, and then the key. So just take note of the pattern: key and then colon value pairs. So what does key colon value pair mean? It means this one is the key, and then there's a colon, right? Oops, there's a colon here, and then one. So that is this one is the key, and then before the colon, and then after the colon is the value. So this one, the thing that I'm highlighting, is a key value pair. And then this one is another key value pair. So overall, a dictionary is a set of unordered key value pairs. So unordered meaning it doesn't matter whether the last name goes first than the first name. So for example, if I switch this up, something like that, it doesn't really matter. So this one is separated by commas and enclosed by curly braces. Okay, let's go over to the next data type. We have tuples. So tuples are ordered immutable sequence of objects. So what does immutable sequence of object means? So immutable means that it cannot be changed. So whatever is inside, whatever is the content, it cannot be changed. And ordered means that then it should be ordered. So the first one should be the first one, and second one should be the second one. So you can't mix them up. You can't change the order of the content. So an example would be 10, hello, then 200.3. So as you can see, it's a lot similar to lists, right? But lists, if we look up here, lists have brackets. In tuples, we have parentheses. So inside the tuples is also objects. So we can still put different types of data types. So we have an integer, a string, and then floating point. So let's go to the next, sets. So sets are unordered collection of unique objects. So an example of sets would be something like this: B, C, 1, 2, 3, and 8. So something like that. So this is just an example. So ordered meaning there, it doesn't really matter. So whether which one goes first. So a collection of unique objects. So unique meaning each object should be different from each other. So in the case that we have a duplicate, so something like this. So there are two similar objects, so two letter A's. So what happens if Python prints this out? So what happens would be that it would remove all other copies and or all other duplicates and just leave one copy of itself, of that object. So let's try and print this out. So, or if I print this out, what should happen? So it should just print, it should remove the duplicate letter A. As you can see, so it removed the letter A. So it is now, there's only one letter A now. So it also, take note that it also arranges it. So from ascending order. Okay. So on to the last, I'll just create another one. The last data type. So we have Boolean. So what are Boolean? So it's a logical value indicating true or false. So for example, it is just indeed true and false. So that is the definition of Boolean. So when you speak about Boolean, it's all about a logical value indicating true or false. So it's just either true, the word true, or the word false. Okay, so let's go over to different styles of printing in Python. So as you can see, you've already seen one style. So this one, just using this, and then I just place the object or maybe a string similar to our very first example, hello world. Or we can also use variables to print. So what happens if I want to print a phrase and then a variable inside it? So let's assign a variable. Let's say my name, which is Joey, and then I want to print this one. So what I can do is print using this syntax. So I just write F and then use either a double quotes or a single quotes. So in this case, I want to use double quotes. So my name is, and then I'll put open and close curly braces here, and then put the variable name. That's it. So what this should do is replace this variable with whatever is assigned to the variable name. So in this case, it's Joey. If I click play, so it did indeed I replace the variable with my name. So if I replace this with another name, for example, John, then it replaced the I replaced my name to the new one. Okay. So how about another what's another way of printing? So let's get a new box here. So I'll put the same variable, and then this one is, so I'll just do the same example, but this time instead of doing the similar pattern here or the similar syntax, I would just use plus and a name. So there's no more curly braces or the letter F. So it's just plus and the name. So what this does is it concatenates this string with the variable. So whatever the variable is. In this case, it's my name. So as you can see, it's the same. It should have the same output. So if I replace this with John, so it did have the same output. So these are just two different syntax, but displays the same output. So how about what's another way? So this one, so I'll do the same example, but this time I'll use %s. So, okay, bear with me. I will explain what this means. Okay, so if I do this, so I'm no longer using the variable name. So I've inputted here my name as a string. If I click play, so it did indeed, my name is Joey. So what this does is whatever I placed after the % symbol here will be replaced here in the %s. So why is it %s? Because the variable or the object that I placed here is a string. Okay, so there are many different ways in printing in printing in this kind of syntax, but I would say this is the most complex of the among these three. So the easiest one would be the very first example or the very first syntax, and that's because we no longer need to identify what kind of variable this is. So this is a string, right? If I placed here an integer, it wouldn't matter at all. See? But if I placed here the same integer, there would be an error. Oh, sorry. So there would not be an error, but this would not be correct because Python is Python is acknowledging this, or acknowledging this integer as a string instead of as a integer, right? So it is not, so Python can interpret whatever variable or whatever object that we put, and it will automatically identify it to whatever data type it is. So in this case, it's identifying it as a string because this one is string, right? So in our first example, we have a integer. So this one is being identified as an integer instead of a string. But take note that so if I hover here, so as you can see, it's an integer, right? There, it's an integer. And if to prove that Python can identify, if I hover again, oops, oh, I have to click play. If I hover again, so there we go. So it can automatically identify whatever data type it is. So just be aware of that. And the common thing among these syntax is that these output that you see here, those are all strings. Okay, so when you print, those are strings. In this case, okay. Okay, let's move on to user inputs. Okay, so oops. So let's do the same example, but this time I want to input my name instead of assigning it to a variable. Well, technically, we are still assigning it to the variable name, but this time we will let the user input their name. So let's use the easiest, for me, the easiest syntax in Python, which is this one. So your name is, okay, there. So if I click play, so as you can see, there's a text box here now. So if I put my name there and press enter, so it just did the same example that we were doing earlier, right? This time, there's a user input. Okay. So about type conversion? Oops. Type conversion. So let's say that there's a user input, birth year, and then input, and then enter your birth year. Okay. And then we want to, whatever the birth year is, we want to get their age. So how do we do that? It's simply as 2021, current year, minus birth year. So, and then let's print out the age. Okay. So as you can see here, if we click play and then enter birth, my year birth is 1999. So there's a type error. So what does that mean? So that's because Python is interpreting our input as a string. So if I hover here, you can see here, Python is reading the input as string. So by default, Python reads all inputs as string. So by default. But we can, of course, change that. So what we can do is change this to an integer, right? Because the year 1999 is an integer. So it's not a floating point because it's not a decimal, so it's an integer. And we can do that by simply placing in and then placing the parentheses. Okay, so if I click play, input the same number, same year. And as you can see now, the age is displayed. So let's try and change this one and practice what we've learned earlier. Years old. So something like that. And if I click play or run, then it should print out this. You are 22 years old. Okay. So let's go to the next. So let's now discuss operators. Let's go first with arithmetic operators. So this goes to say here we will be applying the basic mathematics. So examples would be plus, subtraction, division, multiplication, modulo. So I'll type that because that's not familiar. And then power or the exponents. Exponents. Write it down. And this one is math floor. So it just rounds it up. Okay, so let's do an example. So let's say x is equal to 2 plus 5. And if I print x, it should print the answer or the sum, right, which is 7. So that's how the arithmetic operation is. And of course, like in math, we should follow the operator precedence, which is PEMDAS. So right, we should still follow PEMDAS. So parentheses. So let's say I placed here parentheses and then plus other plus maybe 5. So it should still follow the PEMDAS rule. So parentheses first and then the rest. Okay, I'll write here. Okay, so let's go over to the next. What's the next operator? So comparison operators. So we have here equals, not equal. So let me give me a second to write everything down, and then I'll explain. Okay, so the first one is equal equals. So what does this mean? So we've seen earlier the equal symbol, this one. So that's the assignment operator. But this time, this is indeed the similar equal concept that we know in math. So, and then this one is the not equal. So right, the one with the slash in math, the equal symbol and then with the slash. So that in programming or in Python, we do that by doing this. So with the exclamation point, equal, and greater than, less than, greater than, equal, or equal to, and then less than or equal to. So pretty much similar in math. So if you do an example, so 3 is greater than 5. So we all know that that is not true. So it should print false. Okay, there. Well, how about the case where it is true? So 3 is indeed less than 5. So it should print true. Okay, so what it is printing now is a Boolean expression, right? As we learned earlier in the data types. Okay, on to our last operators, which is logical operators. So there's 3 examples. So and, or, and not. So let's try and print an expression. So let's say print x less than 3 and x less than 10. So when we use and, both condition, so I have 2 comparison operators here, right? So both condition or both expressions, in this case, it's x less than 3 and then x greater than 3. So both of these should be true so that it will print true. So I'll place here a number. So let's say 1. So again, both of these expressions should be true, right? But again, since we all know basic mathematics, then this should not, this one should not be true. So what happens if that's the case? It printed false. So right, because both of them should be true. So if one is false, then the output would be false. So what if I change this one to 0? So it will now be true because both expressions are true. Okay, so how about or? I'll just print another one, create another one. So how about or? If I change this to or, so and then I'll put this back to the original one. What would happen? So or just means that either one should be true. Okay. There we go. So what happens if I place here 0? So both of them are false, right? So then it will output false. So the only time that this one will output a false Boolean expression will be when both expressions here are false. Okay, so again, and when you see the logical operator, and it should mean that both expressions should be true so that it will output true, and then the rest is false. And then for or, either one of the expressions should be true so that it outputs true. In this case, it's both are false. That's why this one is false. Okay, moving on. Conditional statements. Okay, so I'll first put some variables here. So these are all integers, right? And then I will be introducing the if-else statements. So if I type here, if x is greater than 3, so right, the x currently is 6. So 6 is greater than 3, and that's true, and it is correct. So let's type here correct. And then else, print wrong. So if I place here, sorry, if I run this, the output should be correct. So if I change this one to y, what would happen? Do you think that it will still print correct? Let's try it out. And it printed wrong. Why? Because the value of y is 3. So it will replace this one. So if 3 is greater than 3, is it true or not? It's false. So if it's false, it will go to else and then print whatever and run whatever is indicated here. So in this case, it's just printing the string wrong. So again, if I go back to X and then click run or play, and then it will print the correct because 6 is indeed greater than 3, and that's true. So it will print this one. Okay. So let's move on to loops. Okay, so we have 2 loops. So the first one, let's go with while loop. So I equals 0, and then I'll type here while is less than 5. So it then print I. So here what while loop does is that it repeats, or it runs the code over and over again until the condition is false. So the condition here is that I is less than 5. So I is currently 0, right? And then we have a condition here. So it will just keep on printing until the condition is false. In this case, there's nothing that will make the condition false. So what I can do is add a statement here, which adds 1 to I. So after it prints I, it will keep on, after it prints I, it will add 1. And then this will keep on running until I reaches the number 5, because 5 is not less than 5. Okay, so if you print this, as you can see, it printed 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then 5, because 5 is no longer, this one is no longer true when the value, when I is number 5, right? It's because 5 is not less than 5. So 4 is less than 5. That's why it's still printed. So once it is 5 less than 5, the program will end. Okay. What if I want to use another loop, like the for loop? So what's our basic application for this? So let's say we have a list here: pencil, eraser, pen. So we have bag. So how do we print this one? Like I want to print it one by one. So I can use for. So what I can do is for item inside my bag, I want to print whatever that item is, or display it. Let's say let's add something here. I have that item. Okay, in my bag. Okay, so as you can see, it printed, I have a pencil in my bag, I have an eraser in my bag, I have a pen in my bag. So it printed one by one the contents of the list. Okay, so this is the last part of our crash course, and we'll be discussing functions. So what are functions? So we can define a function by using def, and then we can name the function whatever we want. So in this case, I'll just write my function. Oops, function. And then I'll just print something like a hello world. And then if I run this, nothing will happen. So functions are just is a set of code that you can run, or you can call in any part of your program. So let's say if I click run or play, nothing will happen. But if I call this function, my function, so when you call a function, it should look like this. And then I click run, then it printed hello world. So what's another way of using functions? So for example, I have an argument. So an argument means something that you just put inside the parentheses. So if you put here my name, for example, and then I'll put the variable here. So what Python does, it will automatically recognize this, whatever data type that you put here. It doesn't really matter if it's string, if it's an integer list, Python will read it all the same way. And if I put here, I am, hi, and then my name, right? Oops. Okay. So if I do this, it will it will display hi Joey. So that's what it does. Okay. So if we place here a number again, it will just run perfectly the same way that it did before. So, okay. So again, functions is the last part of our crash course, and by now You have learned basics of programming in Python. So I hope this helps in your pursuit in learning Python and helps in your career. And thank you so much for having me.
Thank you so much, Joey. I learned, like personally, I learned so much from this. I've been using the functions for Python this whole sem. I didn't know what it did until now. So I'm sure our viewers were equipped as well with enough basic knowledge to kickstart their journey in Python programming. So on behalf of UB Caves, thank you so much for watching this crash course. And before we end, kindly answer our evaluation forms linked in this video's description to help us improve our future projects. And so with that, we would like to thank our company partners in making Upskill 2021 possible. Upskill 2021 is co-presented by UP Capes and PMFTC Incorporated in Compass, in partnership with Accenture Incorporated, Texas Instruments Philippines Incorporated, Shopee Philippines Incorporated, Analog Devices General Trias Incorporated, Huawei Technologies Philippines Incorporated, Unilever Philippines Incorporated, Mondelez Philippines Incorporated, and Dyson Electronics Private Limited Philippine Branch. In cooperation with ING Business Shared Services, BV Branch, Schneider Electric Logistics Asia Private Limited Philippine Branch, Globe Fintech Innovations Incorporated, SGV & Co., NG Southeast Asia Private Limited, Lazada E-Services Philippines Incorporated, and Procter & Gamble Philippines Business Services Incorporated. Once again, I'm Megan, and I hope you all have a great day. Bye, everyone. We hope to see you in the next UP Capes events.